Imagine for a moment that you are not a body carrying a mind, nor a mind trapped inside a body, but rather a living, breathing harmony of both. In the past, wellness was often seen as a checklist: diet, exercise, sleep, but now we are beginning to awaken to a deeper truth, that our health is not a project to fix, but a relationship to nurture. Women across the world are stepping into a new era where wellness is not about squeezing themselves into molds designed by others, but about discovering the rhythm of their own nature. Strength, as we once imagined it, was about enduring. It was about holding on, about pushing through pain, about proving something to the world. But real strength is softer and infinitely more resilient. It's the kind that bends like a willow in the wind and returns to form no matter the storm. Women's wellness today is learning to dance with life, not fight it, to listen to the subtle cues of the body, the whispers of intuition, and the profound wisdom that comes from stillness. When you care for yourself, truly care for yourself, you are not being selfish. You are recognizing that you cannot pour from an empty cup. Your energy, your health, your peace of mind, they are not luxuries. They are the ground on which your entire life stands. To treat them as optional is to build your world on sand. This new era of wellness invites women to reclaim their birthright to vitality, to see self-care not as indulgence but as an act of freedom, an affirmation of your right to exist fully and unapologetically. Healing, too, is not a destination where we arrive and unpack our bags forever. It is a continuous journey, an ebb and flow. Some days we will feel unstoppable. Others we will need rest and restoration. Both are part of the process. When we stop demanding perfection and start honoring the process, we free ourselves from the endless cycle of self-criticism. Wellness then becomes less about fixing what is wrong and more about embracing what is beautifully human. And perhaps most importantly, the health of one woman ripples outward. When you reclaim your wholeness, you give silent permission for others to do the same. A healed woman inspires her community, her family, and the generations that come after her. This is the power of collective wellness when individual healing becomes a seed for societal transformation. So, as you stand in this moment, ask yourself, what would it mean to live as if your wellness were not an afterthought, but the very foundation of your life? To embrace strength not as a burden to carry, but as a river flowing through you, unforced and unstoppable. This is the invitation of the new era. It is not about becoming someone else. It is about remembering who you already are, stronger than ever. True wellness begins when we dissolve the illusion of separation between body, mind, and spirit, because for far too long we have treated them as distinct compartments, each to be managed separately, as though the mind could thrive while the body faltered, or the spirit could soar while the mind remained burdened. In reality, all aspects of our being are interconnected threads of the same fabric, and when one is frayed, the whole weakens. This is why so many efforts at health and self-improvement fail. We focus narrowly on fixing a single part without tending to the whole. The new understanding of wellness is not about chasing perfection or suppressing what we feel, but about embracing the harmony of who we truly are. To care for the body without nurturing the mind and spirit is like watering a plant while leaving it in darkness, expecting it to flourish. When we begin to see ourselves as whole, we naturally move toward balance. The mind, often flooded with worries, begins to find stillness when the body is cared for through movement, nourishment, and rest. The spirit, often muted by the noise of daily life, becomes more audible when we create space for reflection, connection, and meaning. Each element strengthens and sustains the others, creating a loop of vitality that expands into every area of life. This is not a matter of rigid rules or elaborate rituals, but of listening inwardly, paying attention to what our being asks of us at any given moment. Sometimes it calls for action, and sometimes for rest, sometimes for laughter, and sometimes for quiet. Women, in particular, are stepping into a new era of wellness where their worth is no longer measured by exhaustion or self-sacrifice. For generations, many were conditioned to put their own health last, to wear busyness like a badge of honor, and to ignore the silent cries of their bodies. But true strength is not found in relentless endurance. It lies in attunement, in the courage to honor our needs without apology. This shift requires unlearning the belief that self-care is selfish and embracing the understanding that it is, in fact, an act of service to ourselves, to our loved ones, and to the communities we touch. A woman grounded in her wellness radiates energy, creativity, and resilience that ripple outward, inspiring others to do the same. Healing in this context ceases to be a destination or a fixed state we strive to reach. Instead, it becomes an ongoing relationship, a continuous practice of meeting ourselves where we are. There will be days of expansion and days of contraction, moments of vitality and times of weariness, and all are part of the journey. When we stop fighting the natural ebb and flow of our well-being, we release the constant tension that drains us and open ourselves to deeper compassion. The pursuit of wellness no longer feels like a battle to win, but a dance to enjoy. This wholeness extends beyond the individual. When one woman reclaims her health and harmony, she becomes a quiet force of change. Her renewed energy influences her family, strengthens her relationships, and encourages others to embark on their own path of healing. In this way, personal wellness evolves into collective wellness, a shared commitment to nurturing not only ourselves, but also the world around us. Understanding this interconnectedness is a profound realization. The state of our bodies, minds, and spirits shapes the reality we create. And by dissolving the illusion of separation, we step into a life that feels more authentic, empowered, and deeply alive. The new era of women's wellness demands listening deeply to our own inner rhythms. For too long, the narrative around health has been dominated by external expectations, rigid routines, and quick fixes that promise transformation without true understanding. Women have often been told what to eat, how to move, how to look, and even how to feel, as though wellness were a uniform script that all must follow. But real wellness cannot be dictated from the outside. It must arise from an intimate awareness of the self, a willingness to pause and listen to the body's quiet signals, the mind's unspoken needs, and the heart's deeper wisdom. When we truly listen, we begin to uncover a personal rhythm unique to each of us that tells us when to rest, when to act, when to nourish, and when to let go. This listening is not passive. It is a practice of attunement, a deliberate turning inward amid the noise of the world. To live in harmony with these inner rhythms means learning to trust them even when they do not match societal standards. A woman's energy ebbs and flows, influenced by biological cycles, emotional states, and life's changing seasons. There are times of peak strength and moments when restoration becomes essential. Yet modern culture often celebrates constant productivity, pushing many to ignore their own needs in favor of relentless doing. The cost of this disconnection is profound. Burnout, chronic stress, and a sense of being perpetually at odds with oneself. The new understanding of wellness calls for a radical shift, an acceptance that slowing down is not weakness but wisdom, that rest is not laziness but a vital part of growth, and that listening to our bodies is a sign of strength, not fragility. As women begin to honor their internal rhythms, they often find that their approach to health becomes more sustainable and compassionate. Instead of following punishing workout schedules or restrictive diets, they choose movement that energizes rather than depletes, and food that nourishes rather than punishes. Sleep is valued not as an afterthought, but as a cornerstone of vitality. Stress management stops being about escaping life and becomes about creating a life that feels aligned with one's deepest values. In this way, wellness ceases to be a battle of willpower and transforms into an ongoing dialogue with the self, a process of learning and responding to what the body and mind are truly asking for. This deeper listening also extends to emotional wellness. Many women have been conditioned to suppress emotions, to prioritize the comfort of others over their own authenticity. Yet emotions are signals, carrying essential information about what nourishes us and what drains us. By allowing ourselves to feel fully and without judgment, we begin to heal patterns of disconnection and reclaim the right to inhabit our own experiences. Inner rhythms are not only physical, but emotional and spiritual. And when we honor all these dimensions, we begin to live in a state of greater coherence and self-respect. Perhaps most profoundly, tuning into our rhythms fosters resilience. A woman who understands her own cycles knows when to push forward and when to retreat, when to speak and when to listen, when to gather her energy and when to share it freely. She becomes less reactive to external pressures because her compass comes from within. This self-trust radiates outward, influencing relationships, work, and the way she engages with the world. As more women embody this way of living, the collective definition of wellness evolves from a narrow pursuit of appearance or performance to a holistic celebration of vitality, balance, and authenticity. This new era calls for each woman to become fluent in the language of her own being. For it is in this intimate listening that true and lasting wellness is found. Strength is not in resisting life, but in moving with its flow. For the nature of existence itself is constant change, a ceaseless dance of beginnings and endings, of creation and dissolution. To resist this reality is to exhaust ourselves in a struggle we cannot win, clinging tightly to what must eventually pass or fighting against what is already here. True strength lies not in the rigidity of resistance, but in the supple resilience that allows us to adapt, bend, and transform with life's unfolding. Like water flowing around rocks in a river, strength shows itself in the capacity to continue moving forward, finding new pathways even in the face of obstacles. This way of being does not mean passivity or surrendering our agency. Rather, it calls for a deeper understanding that life cannot be controlled in every detail, and that peace comes from aligning with its natural currents instead of trying to dam them up. When we allow ourselves to move with life's flow, we learn to meet challenges with openness instead of fear. Every difficulty carries within it the seed of growth, but only when we stop treating it as an enemy to be defeated. Resistance consumes energy, creating tension and inner conflict, while acceptance frees us to see clearly what is before us and respond with creativity and wisdom. Moving with the flow does not mean we approve of every circumstance or give up on shaping our lives. It means we stop wasting our strength on denial and start investing it in meaningful action. Life's currents may be unpredictable, but they always carry us toward new horizons if we are willing to trust the movement. For many, the impulse to resist comes from a desire for security, a longing to hold onto the familiar even when it no longer serves us. Yet clinging only delays the inevitable, prolonging pain rather than preventing it. By practicing flexibility, we discover an inner stability that does not depend on external circumstances. It is like learning to surf the waves rather than being dragged under by them. This kind of strength is dynamic, responsive, and alive. It allows us to grow through change rather than be broken by it. In relationships, careers, or personal growth, the ability to move with life's flow keeps us from becoming trapped in old patterns and opens the door to opportunities we might otherwise miss. Women, in particular, are embracing this understanding of strength in the evolving landscape of wellness. For generations, strength was equated with endurance, with bearing burdens silently and pushing through pain at any cost. Now there is a recognition that true resilience lies not in hardening ourselves against life, but in softening enough to adapt, to honor our own needs, to rest when necessary, to release what no longer aligns with us. These are not signs of weakness, but of deep wisdom. Moving with life's flow means listening to the body's signals, trusting our inner guidance, and allowing the natural rhythms of energy, emotion, and experience to guide our choices. This approach transforms our relationship with struggle and change. Instead of fearing endings, we learn to see them as openings for new beginnings. Instead of fighting against what we cannot control, we focus on what we can shape: our perspective, our actions, our willingness to grow. Strength becomes less about resistance and more about presence, less about bracing ourselves and more about meeting life as it comes. With this mindset, even setbacks become part of the journey, teaching us flexibility and reminding us that every moment, no matter how challenging, carries the potential for renewal. To move with the flow is to find freedom in life's impermanence and power in the simple act of trusting our own capacity to adapt. Self-care is not indulgence. It is the foundation of freedom and authentic power, because without tending to our own well-being, we are left depleted, unable to meet life's demands or pursue our deepest aspirations with clarity and energy. For far too long, self-care has been mislabeled as a luxury, something to be enjoyed only when all work is done and everyone else's needs have been met. In reality, it is a necessity, the bedrock upon which every other part of life rests. When we neglect our health, our boundaries, or our need for rest, we slowly lose the capacity to show up fully, to make choices that align with our values, and to respond to life with resilience. True freedom arises when we are no longer ruled by exhaustion, stress, or the expectations of others. And that freedom can only come when we make space for consistent and intentional care of ourselves. Self-care is not about escape or indulgence. It is about sustenance. It means recognizing the signals our bodies and minds give us and responding with compassion rather than dismissal. It is the willingness to rest when tired, to nourish ourselves when hungry, and to seek support when overwhelmed. Many people push through their days disconnected from what they truly need, wearing busyness as a badge of honor, only to find themselves burned out and unable to engage meaningfully with life. When we prioritize self-care, we reclaim the energy and mental clarity necessary to face challenges, make thoughtful decisions, and pursue the things that matter most. In this way, self-care becomes a source of empowerment rather than selfishness, allowing us to lead lives driven by intention instead of survival. Authentic power grows from a state of wholeness, and wholeness cannot exist when we constantly sacrifice our well-being. Power that comes from neglecting ourselves may create temporary results, but it is unsustainable and often comes at the cost of our health and inner peace. Real power, on the other hand, is steady and grounded. It arises from a deep connection to ourselves, a knowing that we are worthy of care and capable of meeting life's demands without losing our sense of self. When we practice self-care, we strengthen this inner foundation, enabling us to stand firm in our choices and navigate uncertainty with confidence. We become less swayed by external pressures because our sense of worth no longer depends on the validation of others. In a culture that often glorifies overwork and self-sacrifice, embracing self-care can feel radical. Many have been conditioned to believe that constantly putting others first is a sign of strength or virtue. Yet neglecting our own needs ultimately serves no one. We cannot pour from an empty cup. When we are drained, we have little to give, and our relationships, work, and personal growth all suffer as a result. By making our well-being a priority, we not only replenish ourselves, but also become better equipped to support those around us. A woman who is grounded in her own care radiates resilience, clarity, and presence that uplift everyone in her circle. Self-care also cultivates freedom because it helps us break free from patterns of overextension and people-pleasing. It empowers us to set boundaries that protect our energy and to say no when necessary, without guilt or fear. This liberation opens the door to living in alignment with our values, pursuing what truly fulfills us rather than what drains us. The more we honor our own needs, the more we discover that self-care is not an act of withdrawal from life, but a practice that deepens our engagement with it. From this place of balance and vitality, we gain the authentic power to create, to connect, and to move through the world with a sense of grounded freedom that no external circumstance can take away.